Hello everyone, welcome to OTHM Level 6 Diploma in Business Management. So today we are going to discuss the Unit 2. Unit 2 is about the business research project. The first learning outcome is to be able to propose a research project in a business and management context. So we have the first assessment criteria in which we assess the factors that contribute to the process of research project selection. So there are different factors. The first one is that interest and passion always drive the motivation and persistence, and relevance to field or industry always solves the real problems, and feasibility always depends on available time, money, and resources, and the gaps in the knowledge always offer some opportunities for contribution. And if we talk about ethical consideration, then it must ensure the moral and regulatory compliance, and there must be availability of data determines project viability. Now we have the second assessment criteria in which we formulate and record the possible research project outline and specifications. So we have different research aims and objectives. First, we have the aim in which we define overall goal of the research. Then we have the objective in which we list the specific measurable steps to achieve the aim. Then we have the rationale in which we justify why this research is important and relevant. Then we have the target audience in which we discuss who is benefit from the outcomes. Then we have some expected outcomes like what results or insights are anticipated. Then at last we have the significance like why will this research make a difference in the field. Now we have different methodology for data collection and analysis. We have different data collection method, for example use of primary and secondary sources. We have different sampling techniques, for example define the population and how participants are chosen. And then we have the data analysis in which we specify the tools and techniques, for example quantitative and qualitative. Then we have different tools for collection, for example software or instrument, SPSS, Excel, or recording devices. Then we have the bias minimization in which we take some steps to ensure that data is unbiased and reliable. Then we have the alignment in which we show how method directly support our research objectives. Then we have the literature review and critique of the sources. So first we have the primary source in which we examine the first-hand data, for example, surveys and interviews. Then we have the secondary sources in which we review the existing books, journal articles, and internet resources. Then we have some credibility in which we assess the reliability and validity of the sources. Then we have a theoretical framework in which we explain how existing literature informs our approach. Then we have research gaps in which we identify areas that are not addressed in current research. And at last, we have the contribution to the knowledge, like how your research built on or challenges that are there on existing studies. Then we have the scope and limitation in terms of references. So the scope include to define the boundaries of the research, for example, topic, region, time, and period. Then there is some limitation in which we acknowledge the constraint time, access to data and resources. Then we have some assumptions, for example, underlying assumptions guiding the research. Then we have term of reference, for example, the specific guidelines that frame the project. Then there are delimitations in which there are some factors that are deliberately excluded from the research. Then there are potential challenges in which we anticipate difficulties that could impact the study. Now we have the third assessment criterion, which we develop research question or hypothesis with rationale. So to develop research question, first we have to explain what issues are we addressing. We have to clearly define it. For example, the impact of remote work on employee productivity in technological companies. Then you have to make sure that the question aligns with the field or industry. For example, how does remote work affect productivity metrics in technology companies? Then our research questions must be precise, not broad or vague. For example, what is the relationship between the number of remote workdays and productivity output? Now we have the research topic, hypothesis, and research question as an example. For example, we have the research topic, that is the impact of remote work on employee productivity in the technology sector. So if we talk about its hypothesis, then hypothesis can be employees who work remotely for more than 3 days a week will report higher productivity levels compared to those who work in an office full time. So this is only one hypothesis that we are showing here as an example. There can be more than one hypothesis according to our variables. Then we have some research questions. For example, how does remote work frequency impact the employee productivity in tech? What factors affect productivity in remote versus office based tech employees? What challenges do remote tech employees face that impact productivity? Now we have the fourth assessment criteria in which we clarify resources efficiently for research questions or hypotheses. Then we have to create an agreed smart time frame for completion of the research. Then we have the Gantt chart for research project completion. Here is the example of the Gantt chart. You can review it, and if you have any question, you can ask me. Then we have the learning outcome two, in which we would try to prepare a research plan and conduct a literature review. So, in literature review, first we have to evaluate how directly the literature relates to our research topic and objective. We must assess the credibility of the studies which focus on the peer reviewed and high impact sources. We must analyze the research method used in the literature to determine their validity and reliability. We have to highlight what existing literature fails to address, showing where our research fits in, and we have to check for consensus or conflicting results across the multiple sources. And it is important to evaluate how the literature supports or challenges the theoretical framework when you are using it. So we have different research methodology. First, we have to compare qualitative versus quantitative method. Then we have systematic reviews that summarize the existing studies while original research generates new data. Then we have to evaluate whether surveys, interviews, experiment, or case studies suit the research objectives. Then we must consider the source, time, budget, expertise required for each methodology. Then we must examine how each method handles the data. And we have to evaluate if the chosen methods produce consistent, accurate, and meaningful results or not. Then we have the rationale for choosing the methodology. So we have to justify the use of qualitative, quantitative, or mixed method based on the research questions. We must explain how the selected methodology aligns with the research aim and objectives. We must give the rationale for choosing the interview surveys or experimental data collection. We have to justify the chosen statistical tool or qualitative coding. We must explain how variables will be controlled or accounted for to ensure the valid results. And we must highlight how the chosen method is resource effective and feasible. So we have different data collection method. First, we have to compare interviews, focus group with surveys and questionnaires. We have to emphasize the importance of consistency in data recording. We must identify potential biases. We have to evaluate the need for controlling variable in experimental designs, and we have to assess whether the data collection tools measure what they are supposed to measure. And at last, we must consider the consistency of the data collection method. Would they yield the same result under the similar condition or not? Then we have the data analysis and interpretation, in which there is qualitative data analysis through thematic coding. There is quantitative data that are using statistical software. We have to use a statistical table to present the data clearly. We must use the comparison of variable to identify the relationships. We must identify the trends in data over the time, and we must forecast the future outcome based on the historical data and the statistical model. So to do the research proposal, first we have the title, that was the impact of remote work on employee productivity in the tech sector. We have the research problem, in which we investigate how remote work frequency affects the productivity in tech companies. Then we have the research question and hypothesis that we have discussed before in the previous slides too. So for this, we have to first design the research design and methodology. So this research can be mixed method, that is qualitative and quantitative. We have to collect different data, for example, surveys for quantitative data and interviews for qualitative insights. If we talk about sampling, then we have to target the tech employees working remotely between 0 to 5 per week. Then there is data analysis, which use the statistical software SPSS or Excel for quantitative analysis, thematic coding for qualitative data. Then there is a timeline. For example, we can collect the data in 4 to 6 weeks, we can analyze the data in 7 to 8 weeks, and we can have our final write up in 9 to 10 weeks. Then we have some ethics, in which there is informed consent, confidentiality, and anonymity that will strictly be maintained. Now we have the third learning outcome, in which we will try to carry out the research according to the chosen research specification. We have the first assessment criteria, in which we carry out the proposed research investigation in accordance with research specification. So there is the proposed research investigation. First, we have to collect the data, then we monitor the progress, then there is a qualitative data analysis, then there is quantitative data analysis. After that, we have the control variables, then we have some document finding, and then we have an ongoing review. So these are the several steps. So first we have to distribute the surveys and conduct the interviews. Then we track the survey responses. Then we can use SPSS or Excel to analyze these responses. Then we can transcribe and code the interviews to some key to identify its key themes. Then we have to ensure the other factors are also accounted to maintain the accuracy of the data. And then we can summarize the data in tables and themes and link it back to the research questions. And at last, we have to review the progress at key milestone and adjust methods if needed. So there is the collection of relevant data. First, we have to distribute the surveys, then we have to conduct interviews, then we have to compile data, then there is quantitative data presentation, and then we have qualitative data presentation. So first we have to send out the surveys to tech employees and ensure the questions aligns with the research objectives. We must carry out the semi-structured interview with employees and managers. We can also collect responses from surveys and interviews. We can use a statistical table, chart, and graph to display our results. And we can summarize the key themes from interviews and present findings through text or tables. We can also verify the accuracy of the data and remove all the inconsistencies and cross-checking responses with research objectives. Now we have the third assessment criteria in which we interpret and analyze the result in relation to the research specification. So first we can use different statistical method to determine the relationship between remote work days and productivity scores. Then we can identify the recurring themes from interviews related to productivity challenge. Then we can compare the finding to the original hypothesis to confirm it. Then we can analyze trends in the data, for example, whether more remote work correlates with high productivity across all the employees, and consider how other variables influenced the result and their overall significance. And we have to compare our result with existing studies and literature and identify whether our finding align with them or not. Now we have the fourth learning outcome in which we're able to evaluate the research and present results and conclusion. So we have the first assessment criteria in which we use appropriate research evaluation techniques to justify the validity of the research. So there are several techniques. The first one is the cross-checking findings that using multiple data resources to enhance credibility. Then we have to ensure the research measured what it is intended to and minimizing the errors and biases. Then we check the consistency of results over the time, and then we have to engage other researchers to overview the methodology. Then we must gather the feedback from participants to ensure the data collected accurately, and we have to evaluate how well extraneous variables were controlled. Now we have the evaluation of outcomes. First, we have to assess the research achieved its aim. Then we evaluate whether the results supported or refuted the original hypothesis. Then we review the quality and integrity of the data collected. Then we identify any obstacle that affected the research. Then we have to consider how the research filled the gap in existing literature or added some new insight in the field. And at last, we conclude whether the project was successful in delivering the actionable valid results or not. Now we have the second assessment criteria in which we make recommendations and justify areas for further consideration. So if we talk about the recommendation, then where research highlights the importance of remote work impact on productivity, but more specific job roles and industries should be studied. And we have to apply research result to optimize work policy and balance remote and office work based on employee productivity levels. And the study's finding also suggests the need for companies to tailor remote work policies. And some limitations are also there, which include the small sample size and potential biases. Then we have the other recommendation, for example, future research should explore the long-term effects of remote work on team collaboration and company performance. And at last, we must consider expanding the scope to international technological firms to understand cross-cultural impact on productivity. Now we have the third learning outcome in which we present the outcomes of the research to an audience using appropriate media. So to do that, we can use the concise PowerPoint presentation tailored to the audience knowledge level. We can include graphs, charts, and table to present quantitative data clearly and effectively. We must focus on the most significant results, keeping the explanation brief and relevant. We must incorporate videos and infographic for a more engaging and dynamic presentation. And we must allow the time for audience question to clarify key points and provide further insights. And at last, we must provide downloadable materials for the audience to the reference afterward. Thank you so much. This is all about unit 2 of the level 6 diploma in business management. If you have any question, please feel free to ask. Thank you.